The number did not feel real. Current estimates suggest over 2 billion casualties. The aide said softly. Even her voice seemed afraid of the words it carried. The count is still rising. 2 billion. Marcus Kane stood motionless in the command chamber, staring at a holographic projection that showed human colonies blinking out one by one. Worlds that had taken generations to build were gone in days. Cities reduced to ash. Entire populations erased before they could even understand what was happening. 2 billion lives in less than 3 days. Kane closed his eyes. He saw his daughter's face, her smile capturing the last message she had sent from Kepler 7. She had been proud of her new home, proud of the garden she and her husband had built, proud of the future she believed awaited her son. That future no longer existed. When Kane opened his eyes again, the grief was still there, but something else had joined it. Something colder, heavier, patient. "What are our options?" he asked. The aide hesitated. "We have 43 ships in the Sol system. The blockade fleet numbers over 200. We cannot break through." Kane nodded once. "Then we don't," he said calmly. "Not today." He turned toward the representatives gathered behind him. Leaders, commanders, civilians who had survived the first wave of destruction. "We survive," Kane continued. "We rebuild. And when the time is right, we make them answer for every life they took." Far from Earth, on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before the High Council. The trial was not really a trial. She was not allowed to speak. Evidence was presented rapidly, efficiently. Manufactured reports, falsified transmissions, lies polished until they shone like truth. The verdict had been decided before she entered the chamber. Guilty. The sentence, death. She was executed in the Great Hall, beneath a ceiling that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations older than Earth itself. Representatives from 42 species watched in silence as humanity's voice was extinguished. Archon Sylvith observed with satisfaction. "One more human removed," he said later, "billions more contained." When it was over, he addressed the council. "The human threat has been neutralized," Sylvith declared. "Their colonies are destroyed. Their fleet is broken. Their home world is blockaded." The council accepted his words. The galaxy exhaled and moved on. None of them noticed the Melody representative leaving the chamber early. None of them saw the message he sent. Quiet, encrypted, and aimed at a hidden receiver on Earth. Betrayal had been witnessed, and betrayal had been recorded. The blockade settled into place. 200 warships surrounded the Sol system. Automated defense platforms locked their weapons on Earth like a cage of steel and fire. The message was unmistakable. Stay, live quietly, or leave and die. On Earth, survivors gathered amid shattered cities and cracked monuments. The Parliament dome lay scarred and broken, a symbol of promises that had failed. Commander Marcus Kane stood before the ruins, facing a crowd shaped by loss. They had lost children, parents, worlds. They had trusted the galaxy and been rewarded with annihilation. "They think we are finished," Kane said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "They believe they can murder our families, and we will accept it." Silence followed. "They are wrong." Kane looked upward, toward stars that no longer felt welcoming. "We will not strike today. We will not strike tomorrow. We will be quiet. We will let them forget us." His voice hardened. "And when they do, we will remind them what humanity is capable of." No cheers followed. No applause. Only understanding. A promise had been made. 20 years later, the blockade ships still held position. Their sensors detected nothing unusual. A broken planet. A defeated species. They never saw the shipyards carved beneath Earth's oceans. They never detected the factories buried inside mountains. They never understood what humans became when survival was their only remaining purpose. The Concord had believed force would bring obedience. They had been wrong. Humanity did not forget. Humanity did not forgive. Humanity waited, and in the darkness beneath their feet, vengeance was already taking shape. History rarely turns on truth. More often, it bends around fear. On Nexus Prime, fear sat quietly behind polished smiles and ancient titles. It hid in the shadows of the Galactic Concord, where 42 species claimed to govern the stars through balance, law, and reason. That balance was a lie. Archon Sylvith had lived long enough to see empires rise and decay. He had watched younger species bloom like sparks, bright, dangerous, unpredictable. Humanity was the brightest spark he had ever seen. Too bright. In just 3 standard years, humans had done what took others centuries. They adapted Concord technology instead of merely using it. They improved it. They shared knowledge freely, formed alliances effortlessly, and questioned traditions no one else dared to challenge. They did not ask for permission to grow. That was their crime. The secret meeting took place deep beneath Nexus Prime, in a chamber shielded from every known sensor. 9 council members attended. Not all were invited. Not all were needed. The humans are building a weapon, Sylvia said calmly. The chamber stirred. A planet killer, he continued, hidden on one of their colonies. If activated, it could erase entire systems. Fear spread faster than doubt. Do you have proof? Asked the crystalline delegate, his facets flickering. Sylvia gestured, and the room filled with holograms, technical schematics, intercepted transmissions, energy signatures. It was perfect, too perfect. Every document had been forged, every signal fabricated, every trace planted by agents who had been preparing this moment for years. The evidence was false. The fear was real. If we wait, Sylvia said softly, we risk extinction. We must act first. Someone whispered the word no one wanted to say. Genocide. Sylvia did not flinch. Containment, he corrected. Quarantine. Confiscation. Removal of a threat. The vote followed. 9 in favor. 3 absent. The decision was irreversible. The attack began 3 days later. Elena Vasquez never saw it coming. She woke to alarms and smoke, to armed guards tearing through her quarters. They did not explain. They did not hesitate. You are under arrest for crimes against the Concord. As they dragged her away, Elena activated a transmitter sewn into her sleeve. It sent a single word toward Earth. Betrayal. The message arrived after the first colony burned. Across human space, the sky split open. On Kepler 7, warships emerged from faster-than-light travel and opened fire within seconds. Orbital defenses were destroyed before they could respond. Cities vanished beneath waves of plasma and kinetic strikes. 2 million people died before the planet could even send a warning. On New Shanghai, the attack came at midday. Markets were full. Schools were open. Children looked up as alien ships blotted out the sun. The battle lasted less than an hour. There was no mercy. Human fleets tried to respond, but they were scattered, inexperienced, and outnumbered 5 to 1. These were not battles. They were executions. One captain managed to send a final transmission before his ship was torn apart. Tell Earth, he said, voice breaking, we did not surrender. On Earth, the reports arrived in fragments. Distress calls. Broken signals. Silence. Marcus Kane stood in the Parliament chamber as the truth took shape. Colony after colony, gone. Entire populations erased based on a lie. How many? He asked quietly. No one wanted to answer. At Nexus Prime, the Council watched Elena Vasquez die. They called it justice. They told themselves the galaxy was safe again. They did not see the Melody representative gathering evidence. They did not realize their own records were being copied. They did not imagine that humanity, wounded and caged, was still watching. The Concord believed it had ended a threat. What it had actually done was teach humanity something far more dangerous than hatred. Patience. The blockade closed. Earth was sealed off, silent, forgotten, and beneath its oceans and mountains, humanity began to prepare, not for survival, for consequence. The galaxy forgot about Earth. Not all at once. Forgetting never happens that way. It faded slowly. News cycles moved on. Analysts stopped debating human containment, and the Sol blockade became routine. Patrol ships reported the same thing every month. No launches, no signals, no resistance. Earth was quiet. To the Concord, that silence meant victory. They were wrong. Beneath Earth's oceans, the first excavation drills began cutting into the planet's crust. Deep under mountain ranges, ancient bunkers, originally designed for nuclear war, were expanded into something far more ambitious. Caverns large enough to house cities. Factories that never saw sunlight. Shipyards hidden where no orbital sensor would ever think to look. Humanity did not rebuild in the open. They learned. Marcus Kane understood something the Concord never had. You could destroy cities. You could kill billions. But you could not erase what humanity became when survival was the only goal left. He did not call for revenge rallies. He did not demand public anger. He ordered silence. Let them forget us, he said. That will be their weakness. And so Earth went dark. Children born after betrayal grew up without stars. They learned history in underground classrooms, where teachers spoke softly about lost worlds and burned skies. They memorized names, Kepler, 7, New Shanghai, Horizon, not as places, but as warnings. Every child learned why the surface cities remained abandoned. Every teenager learned why Earth no longer broadcast signals. Every adult understood the price of carelessness. Humanity did not raise warriors fueled by rage. They raised planners. Year 5, the first prototype warship slid silently into a subterranean dry dock. It was unlike any Concorde vessel. No decorative curves. No ceremonial architecture. Every line served a purpose. Speed, stealth, lethality. Its name was simple. Promise. Year 10. Human scientists no longer studied alien technology to imitate it. They studied it to surpass it. Fold drives were redesigned from first principles. Concorde engineers had optimized for reliability. Humans optimized for surprise. The new drives charged faster, left weaker signatures, exited precisely where intended. Human ships would not arrive near targets. They would arrive inside them. Year 15. Training facilities expanded across the planet. Not just soldiers, engineers, pilots, analysts, infiltration specialists. Combat simulations ran nonstop. Every scenario was rehearsed. Asterisk outnumbered engagements. Asterisk system-wide assaults. Asterisk capital world sieges. Asterisk total information warfare. Humans trained to fight without hatred. Hatred made mistakes. Marcus Kane aged. His hair turned white. His hands trembled when he thought no one was watching. Doctors warned him. He ignored them. I don't need years, he told them. I need time. And time humanity had mastered. Year 20. 3,000 warships waited in darkness, each named for a memory. Asterisk Kepler's cry. Asterisk Vasquez's resolve. New Shanghai remembers. No banners. No speeches. Only readiness. Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship, Vasquez's Vengeance, watching systems come online one by one. His aide approached quietly. All fleets report ready, she said. Kane looked at Earth one last time. Blue. Scarred. Alive. Signal all ships, he said. Operation Reckoning begins in 1 hour. Far above, the blockade ships continued their patrols. Their sensors saw nothing. Earth was still quiet. Earth was still contained. Earth was no longer afraid. The blockade never saw it coming. 200 warships. Dozens of automated defense platforms. Layers of sensors tuned to detect the smallest anomaly. They watched Earth constantly. What they did not understand was that humanity was no longer playing by Concorde rules. At precisely 3:17 Standard Time, the first human ship folded out of nothing, not at the edge of the system, not beyond sensor range, inside the blockade. Before alarms could finish their first warning cycle, human vessels began to appear, 11050, sliding into existence with surgical precision. No charge buildup, no detectable signatures, just arrival. The automated platforms fired first. Their targeting systems locked, weapons discharged, and missed. Human ships were already moving. EMP cascades detonated in perfect timing, washing over defense stations like silent lightning. Power grids collapsed. Guidance systems failed. Weapon platforms went blind in seconds. Then the kinetic fire began. Tungsten rods, accelerated to near relativistic speeds, tore through holes that had once been considered impenetrable. One shot, one kill. Blockade ships died without ever knowing who fired. On the bridge of the Concord Patrol, cruiser vigilant, the captain stared at his sensors in disbelief. Multiple contacts. No, they're everywhere. The transmission cut out mid-sentence as the ship's reactor failed. The vigilant vanished in a flash of light. Marcus Kane watched the operation unfold without expression. "Maintain discipline," he ordered. "Disable, don't annihilate. Let survivors carry the message." Human ships moved like a single organism, splitting, converging, striking with mathematical precision. Engines failed. Weapons shut down. Entire squadrons drifted helplessly. Within 7 minutes, the blockade no longer existed. The galaxy noticed. At Velcrest Minor, Admiral Turvac was reviewing routine traffic reports when his console lit up red. Contact lost with Soul Blockade. His aide reported. Turvac frowned. "Repeat. All stations offline. Patrol fleet not responding." Before he could reply, space above the colony tore open. Human warships emerged in perfect formation, 200 of them, inside the planetary defense perimeter. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the humans fired. Orbital shields failed instantly. Defense fleets scrambled, but their systems were already compromised. EMP waves surged through command networks, turning coordination into chaos. Kinetic accelerators shredded warships before their crews could even target the attackers. The battle lasted 10 minutes. 30 Velcrest warships were reduced to debris. Human losses, 0. A transmission cut through the panic, broadcast on all frequencies. 20 years ago, you murdered our children in their beds. You burned our worlds and called it justice. Now justice comes for you. Not conquest, consequence. The human fleet vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. Velcrest Minor was left intact, but shaken. The message spread faster than fear. Across Concord space, similar attacks followed. Shipyards erased. Military academies crippled. Command hubs silenced. Always precise. Always surgical. Always accompanied by the same message. Governments panicked. Citizens demanded answers. And for the first time in 2 decades, the question echoed across the galaxy. What did we do to humanity? In the Great Hall of the Concord, Archon Sylvith felt something he had not felt in 8 centuries. Uncertainty. The humans were not raging animals. They were not conquerors. They were something far worse. They were patient. Empires do not collapse from external pressure alone. They collapse when their people stop believing the story they are told. The Concord had ruled the galaxy for millions of years not through force, but through narrative, law, stability, order, the promise that no matter how fierce disputes became, the Council would always choose balance over brutality. That promise was now cracking. At first, the Concord tried to control the damage. Official statements flooded every channel. Asterisk, asterisk, human attacks are isolated terrorist actions. Asterisk, 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 the containment of Earth was lawful and necessary. Asterisk, 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 the Council acted to protect all sentient life. Asterisk, but something had changed. The human strikes were not chaotic. They were not random. They were measured. And more importantly, humans were not hiding. They were speaking. The first leak appeared on a minor academic network used by historians. A single document, an internal Concord memorandum dated 3 days before the attack on humanity. It mentioned no weapon, no threat, only concern. Human technological acceleration exceeds acceptable thresholds. The file vanished within minutes, but it had already been copied. Then came the second leak. Audio. Archon Sylvita's voice, unfiltered, unedited. Fear's enough. Evidence only needs to feel real. Once the vote passes, the truth becomes irrelevant. The recording spread across private channels, resistance networks, and independent media platforms faster than Concord censors could react. Denials followed, then silence. Marcus Kane watched the data streams from the bridge of Vasquez's vengeance. Begin Phase 2, he said quietly. This war was never only about ships. Across the galaxy, human operatives activated dormant networks. Scientists, journalists, diplomats, archivists, not soldiers, witnesses. They released fragments carefully, never enough to overwhelm, always enough to provoke questions. Asterisk edited council transcripts. Asterisk contradictory sensor logs. Asterisk financial trails linking fabricated evidence to Silvata's inner circle. The narrative began to unravel. Protests erupted first on minor worlds. Citizens demanded inquiries. Why had humanity been destroyed so quickly? Why had no independent investigation been conducted? Why were dissenting council members excluded from the vote? The Concord answered with silence. Silence no longer worked. 3 species withdrew from the council within a week, not publicly at first. Quiet recalls of ambassadors, temporary suspensions of participation. But the message was clear. We will not burn with you. Archon Sylvith addressed the council in emergency session. The humans are manipulating information, he warned. They seek to fracture us before delivering a decisive blow. Some believed him. Others watched the leaked evidence play on their personal displays and said nothing. Fear had shifted direction. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued its work. Supply lines were severed. Communication relays vanished. Response fleets arrived to empty space and wreckage. The Concord was reacting. Humanity was planning. Kane stood alone in his quarters, studying a star map marked with red symbols. 12 systems, each one corresponding to a destroyed human colony. This ends at Nexus Prime, his aide said softly. Kane nodded. They made this personal, he replied. We're just making it public. In a quiet chamber far from the council hall, the Melody representative finalized the data package. Everything. The forged evidence. The secret vote. The execution order for Elena Vasquez. He hesitated only once before sending it, not to Earth, but to every independent archive in the Concord. There would be no deleting this. The galaxy was learning the truth, and truth, once released, does not ask permission. Empires do not collapse from external pressure alone. They collapse when their people stop believing the story they are told. The Concord had ruled the galaxy for millions of years not through force, but through narrative, law, stability, order, the promise that no matter how fierce disputes became, the Council would always choose balance over brutality. That promise was now cracking. At first, the Concord tried to control the damage. Official statements flooded every channel. Asterisk, asterisk, human attacks are isolated terrorist actions. Asterisk, 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 the containment of Earth was lawful and necessary. Asterisk, 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 the Council acted to protect all sentient life. Asterisk, but something had changed. The human strikes were not chaotic. They were not random. They were measured. And more importantly, humans were not hiding. They were speaking. The first leak appeared on a minor academic network used by historians. A single document, an internal Concord memorandum dated 3 days before the attack on humanity. It mentioned no weapon, no threat, only concern. Human technological acceleration exceeds acceptable thresholds. The file vanished within minutes, but it had already been copied. Then came the second leak. Audio. Archon Silvata's voice, unfiltered, unedited. Fear is enough. Evidence only needs to feel real. Once the vote passes, the truth becomes irrelevant. The recording spread across private channels, resistance networks, and independent media platforms faster than Concord censors could react. Denials followed, then silence. Marcus Kane watched the data streams from the bridge of Vasquez's vengeance. Begin Phase 2, he said quietly. This war was never only about ships. Across the galaxy, human operatives activated dormant networks. Scientists, journalists, diplomats, archivists, not soldiers, witnesses. They released fragments carefully, never enough to overwhelm, always enough to provoke questions. Asterisk edited council transcripts. Asterisk contradictory sensor logs. Asterisk financial trails linking fabricated evidence to Silvata's inner circle. The narrative began to unravel. Protests erupted first on minor worlds. Citizens demanded inquiries. Why had humanity been destroyed so quickly? Why had no independent investigation been conducted? Why were dissenting council members excluded from the vote? The Concord answered with silence. Silence no longer worked. 3 species withdrew from the council within a week. Not publicly at first. Quiet recalls of ambassadors. Temporary suspensions of participation. But the message was clear. We will not burn with you. Archon Sylvith addressed the council in emergency session. The humans are manipulating information, he warned. They seek to fracture us before delivering a decisive blow. Some believed him. Others watched the leaked evidence play on their personal displays and said nothing. Fear had shifted direction. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued its work. Supply lines were severed. Communication relays vanished. Response fleets arrived to empty space and wreckage. The Concord was reacting. Humanity was planning. Kane stood alone in his quarters, studying a star map marked with red symbols. 12 systems, each one corresponding to a destroyed human colony. This ends at Nexus Prime, his aide said softly. Kane nodded. They made this personal, he replied. We're just making it public. In a quiet chamber far from the council hall, the Melody representative finalized the data package. Everything. The forged evidence. The secret vote. The execution order for Elena Vasquez. He hesitated only once before sending it. Not to Earth, but to every independent archive in the Concord. There will be no deleting this. The galaxy was learning the truth. And truth, once released, does not ask permission. The galaxy watched. For the first time in millions of years, the center of galactic power trembled, not from invasion, but from exposure. The evidence streamed across every network the Concord had failed to silence. Forged intelligence, manufactured threats, recorded boasts of genocide. There was no spin strong enough to contain it. World after world withdrew from the Concord. Ambassadors fled Nexus Prime. Military fleets refused orders. Entire governments collapsed under the weight of public fury. The Concord was not under attack. It was imploding. Marcus Kane gave them one chance. His message was broadcast to every system, every station, every world that could still receive a signal. This war ends now for those who choose truth. Surrender the architects of betrayal, those who voted for genocide, those who ordered the execution of our ambassador. Do this, and no civilian world will be harmed. Refuse, and we will come for the council itself. The message carried no anger, only certainty. At Nexus Prime, the remaining council members gathered in panic. 6 species remained loyal, not because they believed in the Concord, but because surrender meant facing judgment. Some pleaded, some raged. One tried to escape. None succeeded. The final fleet assembled around Nexus Prime. 3,000 warships. Old, powerful, desperate. The human fleet arrived minutes later. 2,300 ships. Fewer, but sharper. Kane stood on the bridge of Vasquez's vengeance, watching the enemy take formation around the capital world. They're hiding behind civilians, his aide said. Kane nodded. Then we protect the civilians. The battle began without warning. Human ships surged forward, drawing fire away from orbital cities and stations. Shields flared. Hulls burned. Casualty lists grew longer by the second. Kane felt every loss. But he did not hesitate. This was the price of ending it. Captain Yarichin led the ground assault. Dropships cut through atmosphere and landed near the Council Spire, the heart of Concord authority for millions of years. No resistance. The guards had already surrendered. Inside the spire, the council waited, not defiant, not proud, broken. Chin entered with her Marines and read the charges calmly. Crimes against sentient life. Conspiracy to commit genocide. Mass extermination based on fabricated evidence. No one argued. No one denied it. They had run out of lies. Marcus Kane arrived hours later. He walked the corridors where the fate of civilizations had been decided without their consent. The place felt empty. Power without legitimacy always does. Archon Sylvith was brought in last. Chains replaced titles. Silence replaced authority. This is revenge, Sylvith spat weakly. Kane looked at him for a long moment. No, he said quietly. This is consequence. The arrests were broadcast galaxy-wide, not as spectacle, as record. No executions, no summary judgments. Trials would come. Truth would stand. By the end of the day, the Concord was finished, not conquered, disassembled. The galaxy exhaled. But Kane did not celebrate. There was still one thing left. One chapter humanity had not yet written. The trials did not begin with anger. They began with silence. Across the galaxy, billions watched as the architects of betrayal stood before an open tribunal. Not in secret chambers, not behind manipulated narratives, but in full view of every species they had once ruled. Archon Sylvis stood among them. No throne, no authority, only the weight of history pressing down on him. The evidence was undeniable. Forged intelligence, fabricated threats, orders signed knowing they would lead to extinction. The genocide of humanity had not been a tragic mistake. It had been a calculated choice. The verdict came slowly, not rushed, not shouted. Guilty, not just of war crimes, but of crimes against sentient life itself. The sentence was not execution. That surprised the galaxy. Instead, the convicted were stripped of all power, all titles, all legacy. They would live out their remaining years in isolation, their names recorded permanently in every major archive, not as rulers, but as a warning. Humanity refused to let them become martyrs. They would be remembered as failures. 1 year later, Earth remembered its dead. Where the shattered Parliament dome once stood, a memorial rose, white stones stretching farther than the eye could see, carved with names. 2.3 billion. Each name etched carefully. Each life counted. No symbols. No ranks. No hierarchy. Just people. Marcus Kane stood before the wall, his hand resting on the cold stone. He was 81 now. His body had finally begun to slow, but his eyes were clear. A small child tugged gently at his sleeve. "Did we win?" she asked. Kane looked at her. He thought of his daughter, of Kepler, 7, of 20 years spent in darkness, of a galaxy forced to confront its own fear. He looked back at the memorial. "We survived," he said softly. "That's what humans do." The child smiled satisfied and ran off. The galaxy changed after that. Slowly, unevenly, imperfectly. A new alliance replaced the Concord, not built on dominance, but accountability. Humanity did not rule it. Humanity did not command it. Humanity watched it, and that made all the difference. Kane spent his final days quietly. No speeches, no celebrations. Just Earth, blue, scarred, alive. When he passed, there was no announcement. The stars did not dim, but humanity remembered. The galaxy had once sealed Earth and waited for it to die. Instead, Earth endured, not with rage, not with conquest, but with memory. And the stars learned something they would never forget. Humanity does not disappear. Humanity waits, and humanity remembers.